I didn't like you, I wouldn't do this.
I know you probably dump it on me.
And we're not waiting for you all right.
Nope, go.
Let's drive on.
You guys ready? Trustee Fenton?
Here.
Trustee Dodge?
Here.
Trustee Ruzick? Public Works,
Madam Chair, move to approve.
approval of minutes, yes.
Second.
I'm sorry, John.
All in favor? Aye.
3 Ford Police Interceptor, all-wheel drive sedans.
John?
Madam Chair, this is the purchase of 3 police interceptors, scheduled purchase, scheduled replacement. We did a bid, and Rizzo was the low bidder. We did explore other options with CTS Group. With CMS as a purchasing cooperative, and we still recommend going with Rizzo.
Does anyone have any questions about our purchase for police interceptors in the audience? Anyone on committee?
Just, were either replacements or
Scheduled replacement, sir.
scheduled replacements? Got it. Because we did lose one of these recently, yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Accident? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
All right, Madam Chair, move to recommend to the Village Board accept the bid for purchase of 3 2018 Ford Police Interceptor, all-wheel drive sedans from Joe Rizza Ford of Orland Park, Illinois, for an amount not to exceed $73,938.54.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Infiltration program update.
Madam Chair, we'll have a brief presentation from, we have Joe Sullivan and Mike Young here from RJN. They are the village's consultants that are helping us through the MWRD mandated INI program. So, Joe.
Okay, good evening. Thanks for having us. So this is just a quick recap. We met about a year ago to give a summary update of where we're at with the sewer program. 2015, the village put out an RFQ for engineering consulting for their sewer program. Our JN group was selected. This was in part to prepare for the MWRD ordinance, which was a new mandated program. Down at the bottom, you see the village stats for the sanitary sewer: 260 miles of sewer, 7,000 manholes, 13 lift stations, 46,000 feet of force main, and 23,000 residential customers. So this is the whole MWRD area, separate and combined. Orland Park is down in this region. Why another program? This was done 30 years ago. Well, they came out with an amendment to their MPDES permits in 2014. Part of that was a mandatory program for all the separate sewer areas, in which they had to select, every separate sewer area had to select 10% of their system to investigate, and that was the first 5 years of the program, so we're actually updating on the first 3 years. So the MWRD selected area for Orland Park was bound by 143rd Street to the north, 159th to the south, 94th Avenue to the west, and 82nd Avenue to the east. It was roughly 12% of the system. So projects in 2016 and 2017 included flow monitoring of roughly 80% of the system, sewer cleaning and televising, smoke testing and manhole inspection for about half of the MWRD basin, and then 151st Street lift station investigation. So here's a little bit on each project. So this to the left is the results of the 2016 flow monitoring. Areas in red were the high priority areas as defined by the flow meters. This was the general MWRD priority zone. So we did follow-up flow metering in 2017 there to get established baseline data for the flows coming from this basin. Cleaning and televising from those 2 years resulted in the identification of 8 spots where point repairs were needed, 22 spot liners inside the pipes, 675.
Can you back up for a second?
Yeah,
Quick question
sure.
for you. Just the map where you showed the high priority areas.
Yes.
So give me a second to catch up. Would you say what area was it? That area that, it looks like it's north of what, 159th? Over
Right here?
your high priority area. No, north of 159th.
Oh,
Keep
yeah.
going.
To your left,
To your left. It's in red.
right there.
Yes.
Joe or Carrie, am I mistaken, or is that kind of, that's what, near Centennial West and New?
That's
Isn't that
just
a newer
west of
subdivision?
Centennial Park.
So, I mean, in terms of it was first priority, but you said it was based on flow metering?
Correct. So
So
this,
help me make the jump between a newer subdivision being higher priority on flow metering as opposed to somebody doing the math right the first time.
well, this was a high priority based on flows that were monitored from this basin. So we looked at flows from 80% of the village, and everything in red showed high influence of rainwater when
John,
rain
you see where I'm
occurred.
going, right?
Yeah, if I could interject. We have slip lined, we've done sanitary sewer main line slip lining on 99% of the older areas of town, which would have mitigated a lot of the inflow from the main lines. So the problems that we're seeing in those areas are going to be different from the problems that we see in the newer areas.
Okay, so then what we're saying is, so I don't know how old that subdivision is, but it's not that old,
It is
correct?
not that old.
So
But that
is
doesn't-
that like a normal life cycle then?
No,
10-ish, 15 years after a subdivision, we're seeing this kind of issue?
It all depends on what the issues are, and that's what, as we drill down into the flow monitoring, a lot of times what we'll find is...
It caught my eye because I know it's
Yep,
newer.
absolutely, yep.
Thank you.
So one of the things that could have made that basin jump out could possibly be sump pumps or
Right.
other things that were built during that time the subdivision was built. We went ahead and did smoke testing for half of the MWRD basin. You can see down below here is a downspout that was connected, which tends to put a lot of rainwater into the system. Up here to the right was a manhole frame seal that you can see all the water that would drain toward that sidewalk would be possibly entering into the sanitary sewer at that point as well. So roughly on the private sector, we had 230,000 gallons per day identified through smoke testing and 577,000 gallons per day on the public sector. We also did an investigation into the 151st Street lift station, which takes roughly 25% of the village's flow on the sanitary sewer. So some of the O&M updates that were made after the investigation were adjusting the wet well set points, relocating a pressure transducer that was getting tangled up in the flow, as well as replacing impellers to improve the pump's capacity there at the lift station and calibrating the flow meter that's on the lift station. Some of the recommendations for improvements there were replacing the 4-foot barrel sections, the way the wet well's constructed with 8-foot barrels to allow better access into the lift station, as well as inspection of the force main and evaluation of the need for permanent standby pumps and installation of a bypass pumping valve. So recommended work for 2018 includes the completion of the smoke testing for the other half of the MWRD priority area, which is roughly 82,000 feet of smoke testing, 412 manholes, and then 11 dye water flood setups for the 2017 area that were follow-up for storm inlets that were identified. In addition, we talked about doing an inspection on the force main for 151st Street. So this is a tetherless inspection device that can run through the force main and assess the corrosion inside the pipe, as well as the overall condition of the pipe, which is now 50 years old since being installed.
Joe, if I could just interject real quick. The purpose of the inspection is, as Joe had indicated, was to assess the condition. The condition has a huge impact on the pumping capabilities of the station. So we can improve efficiency by finding out how bad the main is and then making improvements.
Here's part of the other portion of the 2018 work would be preliminary design for the upsizing of the wet well. So taking that from a 4-inch wet well structure to a 4-foot to 8-foot. So here's the existing wet well at 151st Street. Likely there would be a dual hatch that will allow crews better access and visibility into the structure for maintenance and general upkeep of the lift station. We'd be looking to bid that work in 2019 with final design in 2019 and construction oversight toward the end of 2019. Part of the overall MWRD program requires reviewing your private sector ordinance, so things like looking at those downspouts that were connected, or looking at the ordinance, how it relates to sump pumps, doing an ordinance review. Some programs include a 50-50 program match or a closing ordinance to go in and disconnect sump pumps. So that'll be, in the next year and a half, we'll be developing that with staff to look at what can we do on the private sector to reduce some of the I&I coming from the private sector portion of the system. Building inspections is one way to go in and identify private sector inflow. And then the other portion is the long-term O&M program. This basically is coming from the US EPA's CMOM program, which is Capacity Maintenance, Operations, and Management. So basically, the MWRD is looking to continue that initial 10% investigational area with doing 2% each additional year. So we could look at that area that was north of 159th and west of Centennial Park. That could be part of the long-term O&M plan to look at the 2% per year of the system. Right now, the village is doing 2.4% a year roughly, so they're a little bit ahead of the game with MWRD. And that program switches in 2020, so we're roughly 3.5 years into the program. And with that, any questions?
So John, I can't, it's not news, right, that people are connecting downspouts, right?
And sump pumps.
And so is it the sumps or the downspouts, or is it the combination? Because I think it's pretty common for people to tie in.
It's all of the above. Everything has an impact on the system.
Do you think most people know that? Tying the downspouts in is a problem?
My subdivision's really bad.
Several areas are worse than others, but part of the public program is public education, is making them aware of what the impact is on the system. You saw 230,000 gallons per day from the private sector, 500-some thousand gallons from the public sector. We're prepared to start implementing repairs to the things that we can repair, but all of that impacts the costs of operation. All of that flow goes through a lift station, so we have to pump that water. And the same thing, the whole purpose of this is that the MWRD also has to treat that water, and they have to pump it as well. So by reducing that inflow and infiltration and getting that down, it reduces our overall costs of operation and the MWRD costs of operation.
Can we do a media splash, not only through media, but through our Facebook page, through the water billing, on our website, to let people know that it's illegal to connect your downspouts and or your sump pumps to the overhead sewer lines?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just, rely on everybody in the media and staff to get it out, because there are probably a lot of people who are newer that may not know it. I do know that a lot of people, they know you're coming, they disconnect it as soon as you leave, they reconnect it again. Which there's nothing we can do about that. But then, we could give the benefit of the doubt to the residents who really aren't unaware of it, or may have purchased a home and didn't even realize that this was all connected, not knowing it's not supposed to be. So we have all these great media outlets, print, technology, blah, 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 and everything else, and get it out there, and then even utilize people who get a water bill, throw a little piece of paper or something in there saying, just to let you know, this is against the rules, please help us out. It's saving the environment, saving the cost to the village, and the cost factor all the way down.
Absolutely. All of those are great ways to communicate with residents, and we're going to be utilizing the RJN to help us pull together that information in an understandable format, and then we'll work with the PIO's office to get that information distributed to the public.
I mean, especially with all this rain that we just had, that would be this is a perfect time to do it. I do have a question. On this page? Mm-hmm. And it says that it's a 2018 smoke HM and dye, but you mentioned that you were doing the 2017 in blue. So when do you do the yellow that says 2018?
So This is scheduled for proposal for 2018. We did complete 2017 smoke testing last year.
Okay.
Was that?
Oh, so the blue is all complete?
Yeah, correct.
And now for 18, you're doing the yellow?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you go back, I think, 2 slides to the smoke testing findings?
Sure.
Right, so I just love the connected downspout, right? So are we saying that that's tied into
Sanitary.
the sanitaries?
Yes.
And that's the problem, it's the sanitary
That's the
sewers? Because I
problem.
just want to make sure that we're really careful that people tying downspouts through corrugated, lawnscaping tile into a stormwater, right? I just want to.
That's fine.
We got to
That's-
make that distinction.
Right, stormwater into storm sewers, great. Stormwater into sanitary sewers is bad.
Okay. And then on the other side of trying to encourage good behavior, do we fine for this? We've never really fined for this, correct?
We have not, and that's again, that's going to be part of the private sector program, is to possibly look at establishing some type of fines or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'd
But
love
we'll be
to
looking
think
at
we
all
don't
that.
have to get there, but,
Right.
John, this is not a cheap program. What does
No.
this cost us, round numbers, just round numbers,
We budget $500,000 a year
for this?
for this.
So, okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Villa d'Este subdivision stormwater improvement, easement 8356, 138th place.
It's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
I'll put a motion.
Just cleaning up an easement that's required
Madam
for a
Chair.
storm.
Trustee Dodge.
Move to recommend to the village board to pass an ordinance entitled, Ordinance Authorizing Acceptance and Execution of Grant of Public Utility and Drainage Easement and Payment of Compensation therefore, Villa d'Este Stormwater Project.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Disposal of village equipment,
Straightforward, went to auction.
Yeah,
Going to
auctioning
auction.
off pole decorations, Christmas decorations, some chairs from the recreation department, garage sale.
A motion?
Madam Chair.
Trustee Dodge.
Move to recommend the village board pass an ordinance entitled Ordinance Authorizing Disposal by Public Auction of Personal Property Owned by the Village of Orland Park, Illinois.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
2019 Ford 450 4x2 dump truck purchase.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Ruzick.
I move to recommend to the village board to accept the bid for the purchase of 2 2019 Ford F-450 4x2 chassis cabs from Joe Rizza Ford of Orland Park, Illinois, for an amount not to exceed $67,810.44.
There's an and.
There wasn't an, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And accept the NGPA proposal for the purchase and installation of 2 dump body and snow equipment packages from Henderson Truck Equipment of Huntley, Illinois, for an amount not to exceed $73,310. Sorry about that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Elevated tank 8 corral.
John, you want to explain this?
Yeah, just real quick on this one. Currently, by policy, by village board policy, when a cellular provider wants to install on one of our water towers, the initial stage would be the installation of a pod. So they would install one pod on top of the tower with their antennas on it. If another provider wants to come in, they would install a pod on top of that pod. So you'd have stacked pods. We currently have one site, I think it's Tower 1, that has 2 pods on top of the towers. The third stage would be the installation of a corral, which is just a handrail around the top of the tower. It provides another opportunity for cellular providers or any antenna to be installed on top of the tower. What I am requesting is that instead of at Tower 8, there are currently no providers. I'm requesting that we go skip stage 1 and stage 2 and go right to stage 3. And the reason for that is as part of the upgrades that we're doing at all of the water towers, we are going to be installing the corral. It provides safety for the staff that has to go up on top of the towers, fall protection, and it also provides opportunities to distribute the antennas, the multiple antennas that are municipally used to minimize the impacts of conflicts between the signals. Basically, it's just requesting a slight variance to the policy and going straight to stage 3, which is a corral.
Which saves us costs in the long run.
Yes, Verizon, who is the petitioner on this, they would install the corral at no charge to the village, which we would be doing anyway once we get to that tower for an upgrade.
Is there any comments or questions about this item?
Nope.
A motion would be in order.
Madam Chairman?
Trustee Ruzick?
I move to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees to approve the preliminary site plan titled Route 7 and West Sheets, LPC1 and ANT-1 dated 2-218, with a Stage 3 antenna co-location subject to the following conditions: meet all final engineering requirements, meet all wireless communication facility code requirements, meet all building code requirements.
All in favor?
Aye.
Robert Davidson Center demolition.
Madam Chair, as part of the 2018 budget, funds were included to demolish the Robert Davidson Center. The Recreation Department has already relocated all their programs to other facilities, and we're currently in the process of generating a bid specification for the demolition. The purpose of this discussion, excuse me while I move my microphone. The purpose of this discussion is because the building design has created a few challenges with how the site will be left. If you can see the oops, what did I do, Frank? Wrong button. Thank you. The grades at the front of the building are significantly higher. When you enter the front of the building, you're entering the second floor, actually. When you enter the back of the building, you're entering the first floor. So when we demolish the building, there's going to be a significant berm that's left that we'll need to take care of. So in order to get rid of that berm, we're also going to have to impact the mature landscaping that's all the way around the building. And what's going to happen then, there's going to be some significant changes to the views for the neighborhood. When we tear down the building, we're going to have to remove 9 of the 14 trees that are around there. The 5 remaining trees will protect them. You can see there's 4 trees here and 1 tree right there. We're going to protect those trees, but there's always a chance that they will not survive. We're going to protect the root zone to try and to help that. Also, right now, we're going to leave the driveway that currently goes around the facility in place. Once we take the building down, then we're going to turn the site over to the Parks Department, and they're going to evaluate how they can best reutilize the site. At that point, we'll determine what to do with the driveway. Based on the removal of the trees, we're going to have to mitigate or add 24 trees. Now, we will not necessarily replace those 24 trees on this site. The Parks Department has not made any final decisions as to how they want to reutilize the site, so I don't want to put trees in an area that they would possibly have to be relocated. So we'll add those trees, working with the Parks Department throughout, probably at other parks throughout the area. The other conflict or issue that we have is the building has a transformer on the north side. That transformer is high up on the berm and will also need to be relocated. The transformer supplies power to the building, and the building supplies power to numerous path lights, parking lot lights, and street lights in the area. So in order to accommodate repowering those lights, we're going to have to relocate the transformer. We're currently working with ComEd to identify the best location. A few of the options include the area between the 2 parking lots, the RDC and the Cultural Arts Center, or to the north end, the grassy area north of the current RDC. We're also exploring a potential option of supplying power for the lights from the Cultural Arts Center. We're hopefully going to get that worked out in the coming weeks with ComEd. Since we are going to have an impact to what the residents are seeing, we're likely going to be reaching out to, there's 3 residents really that live across the street. We'll reach out to them and let them know that for sure that the building is going to be coming down, and also that their views will be changing. They're going to be, instead of looking at the cultural, or the Robert Davidson Center and all the landscaping, they're going to be looking at the tennis courts that are behind it to the west.
Have we contacted any residents at all about this?
Not yet.
And you just are going to contact the 3, or are you going to do the whole block?
We can contact everybody on the block, but really the only ones that are impacted are the 3 that are directly across the
from
street.
it?
Yeah.
What about to the north? Well, that's all woods.
Yeah, there's really nobody to the north. The 3 that are impacted are really right there. The other ones are across from the Cultural Arts Center parking lot or the Cultural Arts Center.
Trustee Fenton?
Trustee Dodge?
I wouldn't mind if we just kind of over-communicated on this one. So just draw a circle and kind of see anybody who's reasonably got a sight line to the old Davidson Center and just put them on the list. Maybe it's, 30, 40 homes? And just kind of let them know this is coming.
Yeah, what we'll do then is we'll put together just a brief letter, maybe with an exhibit that explains exactly what we're going to be doing. And we'll distribute that we can distribute that to the 2 blocks, actually. People might see us through their back
because
door.
anybody that could, because you're going to see it from a couple of different parts. Right?
Yep.
Across the tracks, you're going to see it. So just let them know what the village is doing and why, which is the building's kind of outlived its usefulness, and what our plans are, which is it's going green.
We can do that.
Thanks, John.
Trustee Fenton?
Trustee Rizzo?
I have a question. John, so that's the transformer that you're showing in that picture? Is that correct?
That's the transformer right there. It's on
Okay.
the north side of the building.
Okay,
But
and it
it's
has to come down because,
because the berm has to be taken down.
Okay.
So it'll be left up in the air if we don't take it down.
okay,
And it only supplies power to the building, but the building supplies the power to the lights. So the transformer is only needed for the lights now. It is not needed because we do not know what the Parks Department is going to do with the site. It'll likely be some type of passive
okay,
recreation.
okay. And will this start until such time as we know what the deal with ComEd's going to be? The demolition? Will we have to have that all figured out before we
Yes.
start the demolition?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we'll make that change as part of the demolition. And most likely, we're hoping that some portion of the relocation of that transformer can be done in-house with Public Works staff.
Got it. Thank you.
Go ahead, John?
Building HVAC controls?
Madam Chair.
Trustee Dodge?
Move to recommend the village board accept the proposal from Automatic Building Controls LLC of Rolling Meadows, Illinois, to serve village facilities for an amount of $23,407 in 2018, $23,407 in 2019, FY 2019, and $24,106 for FY 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mason Lane Stormwater Improvement?
Madam Chair?
Oops, Trustee Rizzo?
Oh, did you want to have John?
He was
make
just going to do a
brief-
quick,
Just Mason Lane is just south of 143rd Street. There's a wetland. The wetland is mainly private, but the water has to flow through it from the north side of 143rd Street, where we're seeing some problems in the Heritage subdivision. So we're going to be we did an initial Phase 1 engineering with Seabell. This is Phase 2 engineering to explore what options we have to improve the drainage through that area and mitigate the flooding that's occurring.
And John, I'm reasonably certain this has nothing to do with the state changing the water flows when they fixed 143rd Street?
This has nothing to do with
Nothing to do with it?
Nothing to do with
That's just anecdotal?
it. Nothing to do with that.
Nothing to do with it, officially? All right, thanks.
Madam
Trustee
Chair?
Rizzo?
I move to recommend to the village board to accept the proposal from Christopher B. Burke Engineering LTD of Rosemont, Illinois for design engineering of Mason Lane stormwater improvements in an amount not to exceed $95,760.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
108th Avenue at 159th Street, water main relocation?
Madam Chair.
Trustee Dodge?
Move to recommend to the village board to waive the bid process and recommend accepting the proposal from Aries of Tinley Park for amount not to exceed $33,128.98 plus a $5,000 contingency for a total cost of $38,128.98.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So you want to explain to waive the bid?
Do you want to explain why we waived the bid?
We're waiving the bid. This needs to be done in a timely manner. It's impacting the construction on 159th and 108th Avenue.
Well, thanks, Jim.
Good. 2017 flow monitoring program additional meter repair payment.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Ruzick?
I move to recommend to the village board to approve an increase of the contract amount with RJ and Group, Inc. of Wheaton, Illinois for the 2017 flow monitoring services in an amount not to exceed $487.50 for additional meter repairs.
The original bid for the work, board
Second,
approved
by the way.
bid, was $82,300. They went to do the work and they found that one of the flow meters was inoperative. We asked them to send it out for repairs. Those repairs put us over the board approved amount by $487. So I need to get your approval to spend the additional $487.
Okay.
Very efficient.
And it's one of the first times I've seen Anne Marie smile at one of these public works meetings.
She made me do it.
Yeah, there you go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sportsplex main stairs renovation.
Madam Chair.
Trustee Dodge?
Move to accept the village board, move to recommend to the village board they accept the job order contract proposal from FH Passion, SN Nielsen Associates LLC of Chicago, Illinois for the Sportsplex main stair renovation, the amount not to exceed $23,834.34 plus 1165.66 contingency.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Does anybody need an explanation about what they're doing to the stairs?
You want
They're
a
replacing the
quick one,
carpet.
Jen?
We're replacing carpeting with tile.
Okay. You want to do technology?
Sure.
Technology, Innovation, and Performance Improvement Committee, approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Lean Sigma 6.
Okay, Joe.
All right, so Trustee Dodge, this might be near and dear to your heart because you are the one who asked us as part of our high-performing organization to utilize Lean Six Sigma
Right.
as a way to improve our processes and to bring more an efficient way and, if possible, a more cost-effective way to service our residents and our businesses. Last year, we started several Greenbelt projects. Tonight, we're going to give you an update as to where we are on that Greenbelt project. Staff, our teams went out and got into it and tried to see what steps we can eliminate or how we can improve to make it more lean. To date, just so you know, we have 52 yellow belt staff that are trained in yellow belt, and we have approximately 15 people green belt, and then Ahmad is working on his black belt right now.
So we'll come back to that in a second, so I wouldn't mind hearing your progress on that one.
Yes, and so as you recall, in the beginning of the year, I told the board that this was a year of implementation
Right.
of some of these projects, and so we started implementing it. So I'm going to pass this on to our Greenbelt team that worked on the process improvement here, which was Sarah and Ed.
Okay, so tonight Ed and I are going to go through our Greenbelt project, which is improving the commercial building process, permit process. We're going to go through some of the tools that we use to complete the Greenbelt project. We're going to give an update on the current project, and then we're going to also talk about how we continue to improve the process going forward.
Yeah, one of the things as you guys go through this, right, is just hearing, I want the narrative as well, right? So
Okay.
there's a lot of data and process here, but also
Right.
how people responded to the process and how well it's going broadly to get this implemented. So if you could layer that in, that'd be great.
Okay. So the first thing we did, excuse me, and was to determine our problem statement. So the initial problem and why this was selected as the Greenbelt project was that staff normally communicated to the development community that a project was going to be reviewed within 6 weeks. When we looked at the data, we determined that 72% of the reviews extended past the 6-week timeline. And then the ones that went past 6 weeks were delayed an additional 8.5 weeks. So this is something definitely that we wanted to reduce down as we went forward. The next thing we looked at was our SMART statement or goal statement. So what we wanted to do was reduce the time to 5 weeks instead of the 6 weeks that we were telling the development community. We wanted to come up with a streamlined process that allowed us to get this permit reviewed by the communicated date. The 5 weeks was determined by discussing with the development services staff and also surveying other communities.
Okay, so in order to get an idea of what the problem was, we analyzed commercial permit review data from January 2014 to August 2016. That was a total of 337 permits that we extracted from our enterprise system, and then basically there's various levels of commercial review, but we focused on new commercial construction and commercial remodels and alterations. As part of the process, we charted each year's commercial permit reviews in a time series.
Oh, no, there's no outliers here.
So yes, the data that we received from here is basically that the median review time was approximately 58 days, and that, as you can see probably from here, is that the majority of the extended review times took place during the construction season. So it was pretty straightforward, the information we got from the time series.
How much did you guys love doing the statistics?
It was my favorite part. No.
Yes, I really enjoyed it.
Gave me a lot of flashbacks from college. But anyways, so the next item is we engaged the key process stakeholders, which included our building division manager, our office manager, some inspectors and plan reviewers, as well as our front office staff, to determine, in their opinion, what they perceive to be the major issues as to why there would be an extended review time. And I guess the highlights of this is that a lot of the reason why we see an extended review time, or it's perceived to be an extended review time, is because we allow incomplete submittals to be submitted for permit review. So essentially the building division wouldn't be able to review it even if they started on day one, because they haven't completed all the necessary requirements. And in addition to that, they're required to provide a general contractor on their application, but the subcontractors, which we need to be licensed and bonded with the village in order to issue a permit, are not required at the time of submittal. So that all takes time to get that worked out. And some of the other things were that on the slide it says the plan review area has some distractions, and mainly what that is there are a lot of pop-in to the department. They'll come up to the window and ask the status of a permit, and there are also a lot of phone calls that the inspectors field, and all the time spent doing that is time that they're not reviewing plans. So those were some of the sticking points.
So this kind of confirms some of what I think we've all thought for a long time. Was it hard for you guys as a working team with the people doing the job to kind of get this outlined? Was this a hard process?
I don't think so necessarily. Once we engaged them we asked, when these weren't things that Sarah and I came up with, and I had to separate myself from being so familiar with the process. But I think what worked so well is that when we started saying what we were hearing, the people that deal with it every day wanted to tell their story, that they were doing things correctly, and that there was other items that, they think that could be improved. So engaging them in the process, I think, really helped.
Got it.
And I think when we came up with our recommendations, we kind of had to go through that a couple of times to convince the department that maybe this was a better way to do things, kind of swing them to what we were thinking to improve the process.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And then, of course, basically from those 337 permits that we took a look at, what we did is took a random sample of 20, basically a random sample generated from Excel, just 20 permits, and then took a look at the breakdown of that time delay. So from the submittal to the issuance, we went in and analyzed each permit based on what was included in our enterprise system, as well as the notes that were on the permit, to determine who was responsible for each time period, whether it was being reviewed by the village, it was out for response to those review comments, it was being processed by the clerical staff, or it was just waiting in line to be reviewed. And we separated that all out. So once we collected that data from the random sample, we came up with the results that you see on the screen here, the Pareto chart. So basically, when you separate out all of those times, approximately 40% of the time spent was from the village review time. A little bit over 30% of the time accounted for the customer review time, and then the smaller portions of the total review were either the wait to be reviewed or the clerical processing.
So then the next step was to vote on what we thought were the three major issues and to brainstorm for solutions. So we went back to that fishbone diagram again, and we met with the staff, and we made a couple corrections to that. And then after that was finalized, we went through and we voted on the three major issues that we thought delayed the process. I think Ed mentioned these before. The incomplete applications are accepted, that the contractors cannot determine the status of the permit online, and that the plan review area has numerous distractions and interruptions. So those were the three major issues that we identified that were making the process longer than we had hoped. After that, we brainstormed for possible solutions to reduce these issues. After we talked with the group, we found that changing the application process wasn't possible at the time. And then also, as we were doing the project, we were looking for a new software so we could do the online permitting. So we weren't going to focus on that area at this time because we're in the process of implementing that software right now. So we chose to focus most of our efforts on eliminating the distractions and interruptions in the plan review area. We created checklists for petitioners. We created some FAQs for the staff at the front desk so they could use those to answer the questions of people coming in. And then most of our efforts were put towards creating an expedited review process. So this pilot program for expedited reviews was created for certain types of businesses. The businesses are less than 4,000 square feet for the first review, and then reviews are also available for second reviews for businesses less than 7,500 square feet. In addition to the size restrictions, they also have to be permitted or have all the appropriate zoning approvals prior to requesting the expedited review. So each Thursday afternoon, the building division manager schedules reviews, and on the day of the review, the architect can come in and meet with staff to go through the plans together. If they have any corrections, they can make them directly on the plans, and the permit can be issued that day. If the plans are not approved on that first day, then the first review of the project was completed in that one day instead of over multiple weeks. So we found that this process had a lot of benefits to the businesses and the community owners, and it's been well received by the community.
How did the customers respond to this? It sounds like fairly well.
They're very excited about the opportunity that we were offered. A lot of times when we get reviews, that's one of the initial comments in the preliminary meeting is, do we offer some type of expedited review? And the fact that we do for certain reviews now, and we don't charge an additional fee in order to do it, was very well received.
Are you finding that you're getting more completed applications now versus before when they would turn in incomplete just to get it in?
Yes, because with the submittal checklist, and in addition to that, because of, as we work through some of the issues that we saw in the review process, our building division manager has been more open, or has been having more preliminary meetings so that once it's in, it's ready to be reviewed.
So did that just shift the time, or did that make the whole process a little more flow efficient, where you're doing pre-meetings? Because it sounds like one of the things you said, it was what we've suspected for a long time. Somebody walks in, it's a partial. In their minds, the process is running, we're waiting, and then everybody's unhappy. So I just want to make sure that the crux of that problem is being solved.
I believe so, because I think what the checklist is getting is most common items missed. As in addition to, when I say preliminary meeting, it doesn't necessarily have to be a meeting. It could be a phone call, or 5-10 minutes for them just to hit all the high points. So I think there's less time in the prelim than there would have been if we were waiting and notified them to resubmit.
Gotcha.
Okay, so then as part of the Greenbelt process, we have to prove that the new process is actually improving the timeline. So we had, when we were doing our project, we had 4 new applications that were submitted with the new process. The times for those processes, for those reviews were 27 days, 12 days, 6, and 8. So we wanted to make sure that we were 95% confident that our new process was improving the time for this. So here's some more statistics for you. So we completed the T-test, so I'm not going to go into all the details.
No, we're
of
good.
this.
We'll trust her. Yeah, we got it's a nerd thing. It's a nerd thing, so.
Yes. So our null hypothesis is that it was going to be greater than 35 days, because then that was our goal. And the alternative hypothesis was less than 35 days. So we calculated the mean of our test data, which was the 13.25. So one of the things we want to see is a p-value that is low. Ours is 0.0098. So that indicates that the data did not occur by chance. The T statistic here is negative 4.5. We want that to be less than negative 2. So it appears that the new process is not exceeding the 35-day goal.
Pretty thin sample size, so we'll come
Yes.
back to you guys.
Yes.
We'll come back to you guys
We
on
have
this one.
more now.
Yeah.
But that was when we
No,
completed
I
the
mean, but that's,
project.
and, you know, and thank you guys for being the first to jump out of the airplane and trusting us the
Yes.
parachute was going to work. So we appreciate that, right? Because this is part of how you affect change, right? And that's why I was asking about the process and how well it went and were people receptive to it, because this can be a little intimidating for some, so.
When was the pilot, when was this completed?
Time frame
It's
was,
from July,
yeah, here we can go to the, right here.
okay, yeah, so the pilot program for the expedited review were the 11 permits were issued between July 2017 and March 2018. And on average, there was 35-day review time or permit from submittal to issuance. The average for these,
Yeah, so the 4 that we did, that was through our Greenbelt project, so
right.
we finished in right before July
right,
2017.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, so that was like a 3-month time period in the summer of last year.
So how about in the last 2 months?
Yeah, so that's what we have here from July 17 and March 18. We had 11 of them.
11 expedited reviews with a total average of 35 days for them from submittal to issuance. And then when you separate out, the average village time was 12 days and the average outside time was 23 days. But the important thing to note is what we've done is basically eliminated the village permit review time. So that 12 days is either them being scheduled for an expedited review and waiting for it to happen, or the clerical processing to actually get the permit out. The 23 days that you see, the average from the outside time is either revisions for something that was required, or perhaps they had to get their contractor's license, fill out an application that they missed. And then also the next item on this slide, so in that same time period from July of 17 to March of 18, permits that were not expedited had an average review time of 39 days. So what we see in this small window is that what we anticipated is that when we're removing some of these from the queue with the expedited process, that the overall process is actually getting faster as well. And then as an additional update, as far as, staff and everyone getting behind the idea, we've actually expanded the expedited review program already from the situation that Sarah described to our fire alarm and our sprinkler reviews. So that's taken off as well.
Okay, so what kind of, so good start, right? Great start, actually. What kind of data, are you still tracking all this data, given all the money we've been spending with Frank to track the data, to manage it? Is that
Yes.
happening?
So what we did throughout the process to help that happen is standardize our notification from the front office staff, because reporting the actual timing was a little bit different because you had to determine whose court it was in. But now, as soon as someone is notified, an email is sent, written notification with a date is sent, so that I can track, or we can track, the timing that it takes either on the village end, the customer end, or generally in waiting. The other thing that I'd like to say too is that with the Tyler Technologies, they have that built into the system, so that you basically, you hit the button when it's village time. As soon as it gets sent out, you hit the button and it starts tracking the other time. So right now we have it, but it'll be easier as we move on.
So as we go, I guess, because we got to be mindful of today. So as we go forward, right, so with Frank and you guys and Ahmad, we got to keep tracking this to kind of bring this one back, because these things are never really done, because it's good progress, but there's more, right? Doesn't sound like theoretically you can't get closer to the expedited as your speed.
Right. The next critical step in this entire process is going to be the Tyler Technologies. I mean, it's going to change the way we do business completely. It's going to allow submittals to be submitted electronically and also sent back electronically. It's going to allow a developer or builder to have a unique user ID where they can log into our system with that ID, and they can determine exactly, without having to pick up the phone or sending an email or coming in, exactly where the status of the review is. If something's incomplete, they're going to see it. If they can see, they'll be able to see if the plumbing review's been done, but maybe the mechanical hasn't been done. So it's going to be a huge benefit, not just for the development community, but for the village as well.
So Frank, do you mind just kind of shouting out when we think with Tyler? I know there's been some issues that we're kind of working through, but you got a date in mind for this?
So we do our kickoff on June 25th.
Okay.
For the Energo portion of it, so we're currently in the process of rolling out the EAM, which is Enterprise Asset Management, which is more for the work orders, assets from the town, GIS, facilities, things of that nature. So we probably won't go live with the Energo Tyler system until December
Okay.
this year. We're working in January.
Got it. All right, thanks. And then I guess, the question, I got one more question for Joan.
I was just going to say too, and if you guys all received, every quarter we are given an update with the measurements and where we are with all of our Greenbelt projects that we started to implement.
Okay. And then I know, Ahmad, you're working your way towards your black belt. Just, can you do a quick report out on how that's going?
Black Belt Charter has been the Black Belt Charter has been approved by the head of the NIU Department of Engineering. Right now, I have completed the define phase of the project, and I am currently working through the measure phase. We have implemented a call accounting software for a village-wide communication enhancement project that I've been working on.
Got it. All right. No, appreciate that. Sorry. All right, Joe, we'll keep pressure on this one because we have to.
Right. And just as
Thank you.
as a last aside is that throughout the year, we will be bringing the other Greenbelt projects to this committee to give a status update as to where we are with them as
Okay.
well. And we've started identifying several more Greenbelt projects that we have some teams assigned to as well.
And then at some point, we'll start having you report out on everything that you've had staff implement so we can hold you accountable, Joe?
Yes,
Okay, good.
of course.
All right, thanks.
Ready?
Yep.
West Interactive Service Corporation Civic Live website design, hosting, support, maintenance partner.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Justin.
move to recommend to the village board to approve a purchase of a website design, hosting, support, and maintenance from West Interactive Service Corp., Scotts Valley, California, for a total amount not to exceed $30,000 for the first year, with an annual maintenance cost of $6,825 for each additional year 2 and 3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Renewal for the Code Red emergency notification system.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Fenton?
move to recommend to the village board approving the Code Red emergency notification system for a period of 1 year at a cost not to exceed $21,012.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think that's it for this committee.
Department Services Planning Engineering Committee, approval of minutes.
For a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Payless Community Hospital reimbursement for underground detention.
Carrie, can you just briefly
Sure,
describe
Madam
what this
Chair, as
is?
part of our agreement with Payless Hospital, when we did the property exchange for the Health and Fitness Center, we agreed that we would pay for 50% of the underground detention that was required for them to do, and in order for them not proceeding to do the demolition of the Health and Fitness Center. So this is, we've reviewed all the numbers, the underground detention has gone into their project, and now we're asking for approval to basically authorize the payment. We have budgeted this in the CIP budget for the last 2 years. We are a little short on the final dollar amount, which is the $65,811. So there's a budget adjustment out of the water fund that needs to be done as well.
All right. Is there a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Trustee Dodge.
Move to recommend to the village board approval of the payment in the amount of, $1,015,811 to Payless Community Hospital pursuant to the development agreement, and move to recommend to village board approval of a budget adjustment in the amount of $65,811 from the water fund.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Land Development Code Amendment.
Madam Chair, based on the timing, I'm not sure how much in detail do you want. We do have a presentation, a pared-down presentation from Planning Commission on the revisions to the signage code that we can quickly walk through, if that would be your pleasure, or we can just do a brief summary.
I
Go
think
ahead,
we
go
need
through
the
it.
presentation. This is
Yeah,
important.
let's go
Okay.
through it.
All right. Stephanie, go ahead.
Good evening. This is an update from the presentation that we gave you in April, so I will go through it very quickly, and if you'd like anything in more explanation in detail, please let me know. Down. All right, there we go. So we have the why, the timeline, the preference survey, notable changes, and then next steps for this project. The last major update to the sign code was in May 2011. The current code's difficult to navigate. There's a lot of inefficiencies and inconsistencies. There's no graphics or tables. It's very text heavy. Our best practices for signage and our local preferences here in Orland Park have changed. And there's some legal issues with our code because we now have to make sure everything is very content neutral. We can't regulate signage based on what the message displayed is. So the goals of the new code are to make it easier to read, more efficient for staff to administrate, have all the regulations relate to the village's vision, make sure it's legal and consistent.
That's always good.
We've been working on this project for a couple years now with many of the different staff members, and it's definitely been a great team effort throughout the time that we've been working on it. Basically, when I came here in January, we started with updating the previous draft and went through several internal reviews with staff, brought it to this committee back in April 16th. Took it to the Plan Commission for a public hearing on 2 occasions to make sure the Plan Commission was able to review some of the input into the draft, and brought it back to this committee tonight, and the final step would be the village board in June. Here are a couple images from the visual preference survey results. As you know, various staff members and elected officials participated in this survey either this year or last year, and we took all of the data from that and developed sort of this scoring system to let us know which signs were voted highly or not very favorably, to be able to develop different regulations for the signage. So as you can see on here, these large numbers indicate things that were good and bad with those results. So notable changes, we wanted to make sure everything was very clear, so we added some different sections that made things clear, such as the measurement and calculation. We made sure that for a wall sign, the background of the facade would have to be restored if you took down your wall sign, so you won't see paint, holes, discoloration on the facade. Major changes are reorganization of the sections to make it easier to read, graphics and tables, again, to make it easier and more clear. A-frame type signs become allowed, box signs become prohibited. I've got some images of those. So that's an A-frame sign, that's a box sign, and a box sign is also known as a cabinet sign. It's basically a single shape that's internally illuminated.
So quick question for you, like on the A-frames, if somebody puts out in front of the door, you see, pretty common. The assumption is they're going to take them down and put them up all the time, or?
So it's exempt from needing a permit, and they can have it out during their business hours, but it has to be brought inside when it's not open. And there are some design standards as well. We ask that it's aluminum or wood in construction. So it has a little bit more character to it, like the one you see on the slide here, rather than some of the plastic ones that don't look as nice, to be honest. And we want to make sure it's also securely weighted down so that they don't blow into the street or the parking lot. A couple other things here. We made sure that non-conforming signs are addressed. There's a new formula for calculating the allowable area that a sign can be installed, and certain temporary signs are only allowed for grand openings. Here are some of the graphics.
We allow that kind of sign.
You can see these here display the allowable and prohibited types of signs. These are some of the new tables that you'll see. They are color-coded based on different districts, and it's a lot easier to read than just a bunch of text. So you can see here wall signs, ground signs, and other types of signs have different regulations by columns for land use, sign face area, number of signs, height, and any other additional regulations. And temporary signs, wall, ground, and other types. There's banners, feather flags, pennants, and inflatable signs. Some of these signs are proposed to be allowed for grand openings only. We defined grand opening as when a business opens for the first time at a physical location. We also allow expansions because it's the first time that business is opening in that specific
Can I ask you a
space.
question while we're
Yes.
going through this, just so for clarification? Because this is the one issue that I think a lot of us have a concern with, is the temporary signs. And I think Carrie and I discussed this, and I said, let's let, some of the other members of the committee have their input. The banner signs, why 7 days, 4 times annually? When all the other temporary signs seem to be much more restricted.
Right. Well, actually, with this proposed code change, the only type of temporary sign you can have, unless it's a grand opening, will be a banner sign.
Okay.
And we put the restriction on it. And so let's take, for example, maybe you have a seasonal store like the Halloween store or a Christmas store. They put a banner out to advertise the name of their business. They're not going to do a permanent sign. They're going to do a temporary sign because they're only going to be in there for 3 months. That would be an example of a banner sign being adhered to the building. Or they might be doing a tent sale or something. They want a temporary sign, just a banner just for that case.
So let me stop you there before I forget. So a Halloween business, we've seen them on LaGrange Road.
Pop-up
They only-
retail, right.
Yeah, they only get to put it up for 7 days, and then they have to take it down?
So if you look at number 2, we did factor in that type of business possibly needing an extension. So what we put in here is that
That's good news.
Frank's always working.
Yeah, thanks, Frank.
So in special circumstances, the petitioner can submit a letter requesting extra time, which is reviewed in-house on a case-by-case basis. And some of the special circumstances we listed are charitable events, temporary or seasonal uses, the delay in installation of a new permanent sign, or a store closing. But it's not limited to just those things.
But even so the store closing, they put it out for 7 days, and then they'd have to make application to
Right.
extend it?
They would.
Okay. So that's the one that I have a problem with.
And this is truly a policy decision by the
Sure.
board, as we discussed, Trustee Ruzick. We have listened to what the board has been sharing with us as we've been going through this exercise, but at the end of the day, it's really 100% up to you guys deciding how restrictive you want to be and or not want to be. The only thing that I just want to make sure to know, and I know we discussed this, is when we're talking about temporary signs and the type, we can regulate how long, we can regulate the size, we can regulate where. We can never regulate the content. So we
Either
will
allow them
defer.
or you allow them or you don't then.
Exactly, and that's across the board. You can't pick if you like McDonald's, they can have it, and Burger King you don't. Can't have
Absolutely.
it.
No, I understand that.
So we went very restrictive compared to what the code allows today. You can drive up and down our major commercial corridors, and you can see we allow the banners, we allow the blow-ups, we allow all those things. This is a take back of those things that we currently have in the code. If the direction from the committee is to do that even more restrictive, we will surely do that. We will take that direction, and we will make these changes before it goes to board.
So that's a change, the banner?
Yes.
From, right now, it would be allowed 365 days a year?
No, I do believe the temporary banners still have a restriction, but it's not as restrictive as what we're proposing.
Okay,
So-
because the rationale,
Yeah,
I'm
that's-
sorry, the
no, go ahead.
rationale you gave for it, I completely understand, but I don't know that making it available to every business that doesn't have a rationale
Right.
makes sense. So if there's a way to allow that where there is a legitimate business purpose that, as provided for in number 2.
Right.
But to just say, we're going to
Anyone
allow
can have it.
everyone to throw up a banner sign for no reason.
We can restrict it based on
But that was my
seasonality.
feeling,
Want
but
to
I'd
take a
ask.
quick consensus?
So to go along, I mean, I agree with what trustee Ruzick is saying. I don't like the fact that anybody and everybody can get that banner sign. I think the restrictions in number 2 are very helpful. But why are those flying flag ones allowed for 14 days?
Because those are for grand openings only. So if you look over in the additional regulation
And then
column.
who's going to be responsible for making sure they're down after 14 days?
Well, we are now, yeah. So, and it is an enforcement nightmare, it can be, without a doubt. But we have restrictions on those type of blow-ups and balloons now, which means that we have to go out and we have to regulate how long they've been in. I will be completely honest with you, it is not a top priority when we come to property maintenance things. You know, catching a sign that's been up 2 days or 3 days past the permitted thing is not right to the level of like when we get a resident complaint in the neighborhood or something like that. So we have to prioritize those things, those
What
calls.
about all the stuff that pops up over on the weekend? I mean, they know staff isn't working, so that's
Right.
why they do it, but what can we do to regulate that?
Well, that's a challenge. Again, we have worked very good with the Public Works Department. Director Ingram does have part-time people who can go out and collect the signs. We typically take those out of the right-of-way. We don't take private signs off of private property. We only remove those that are in the right-of-way. And then we will take those back and we will dispose of those. But as far as removal of private property, that is done through our land development code, and we have to give them notice, and we have to allow them, I think it's 5 days in the code to remove it, and then if they don't remove it, then we issue a citation. But those are signs on private property, not within the public way.
And
And those are systems that we follow now.
And I know we were, during the LaGrange Road construction period, we were lenient and we enacted some rules that allowed them to use the flag signs.
Right, you guys actually adopted, the village
Yes,
board adopted
yes.
a policy that's still in place today.
Right.
And what that policy basically stated was that in the event when you have a large road construction project, that we will allow leniency for those businesses, as long as they're not creating a threat to traffic or blocking, views or turning radiuses or things like that. We will allow them to have some of these things until such time that the construction project has ceased, and then they have to go back to following the code that's in place. Now, for LaGrange Road, because it's technically ended, at the beginning of the year, when we were getting ready to renew business licenses, we sent a letter along with those renewals to every one of our businesses up and down LaGrange Road, and we said, the project's finished. Now it's important that you realize that we're going to start enforcing these codes again because there's no longer this waiver because of the road construction. We did get some pushback, and I'm sure some of the board members heard about it as well, that, they were so used to doing it because it was such a long project that they thought they could continue to do it, and that wasn't the case. So we've been following up on those. That policy you guys adopted would still apply for 159th Street, for example, that's still under construction.
Yeah.
So that policy is still in place.
And this is one of those where the flag signs, the banners, they are cheap. They do wonders for the businesses.
Right.
I mean, they love them, and we love to support our businesses,
Right.
but we have to temper that with, we spent millions of dollars on LaGrange Road
Right.
to achieve a look that, we're happy with,
Yep.
and that may not include temporary signs anymore, so.
And I think if you drive up and down, you see that actually a lot of LaGrange Road has been substantially cleaned up because of the result of us doing that enforcement. I will note something unique when we talk about store closing. Since we've had a few national bankruptcies that have occurred within our commercial corridors, it was interesting. We had a federal bankruptcy court out in New York City who recently came in and said, allowed Toys R Us and Sears to do certain, and part of the court proceedings from the bankruptcy judge allowed them to do certain signage that is prohibited in our code. And so obviously my property maintenance inspectors, they were out there. We had people standing in the medians and walking around with signs and stuff that you might have seen. So we went after them, and actually the police department issued them citations. In those particular cases, we have been working with our attorney, and we had to reach an agreement because the federal court does have precedent in those cases. And so in some of those national bankruptcies that you're seeing happening right now, you may still see some banners because they're actually written in the bankruptcy decision. And so in those cases, we have to be hands-off. Otherwise, we're going to get pulled into the federal courts in New York City, and I don't want to go there.
Right. I'm just saying, we
Yeah.
don't want to create the exception
Right.
to be the rule.
Right,
to allow
exactly.
it. But-
So
but-
just, if you still see some of that, it's because we don't have a say in those particular cases.
So the people out there, the actual human being with the big signs.
Yes, which
we
is
have to
prohibited
allow.
by our code. But in that particular case, the federal bankruptcy judge declared that they could do that. So we used our, Ken Fricker was where it's able to negotiate on behalf of the village, where they are allowed to have them still standing out there holding the 50% off store closing signs, but they can't be on the right-of-way, they can't be in the public way, and they can't be where there's going to be the potential where they could get hit or they could cause an accident. And so that was the compromise that we came up with.
I guess I'd like to hear directly, or I'll call Ken. It's like, okay, tell me why a bankruptcy court in New York gets to override local zoning laws. That's,
Plus, they're out there on the weekends and they're in the right of way. They're right along the Grange Road.
so we'll have to figure that one out, but I wanted to say, I kind of agree with Carol's point on this one, but I just want to kind of make sure I understand, the inflatables, the pennants, and the feather flags, we're now saying grand opening only.
Right.
It seems self-evident what the definition of grand opening is.
We defined it.
Okay.
Because sometimes they play games about that.
Yeah, no, and, you know, it's, I still got some concerns about this one, so, we're basically saying, we're saying really restricted on the pennants and the inflatables.
Yeah.
And so the next 12 Mattress Firm stores that open up in Orland, we're not going to have the banners or the pennants, or we are? Because
Well, if-
I hate the things.
If
you
it's
want
for
the
a
personal
grand
opinion.
opening, it's a brand-new mattress store.
Unless we
then
don't.
Unless you say they're not, you can say they're prohibited. You can't have them at all.
Yeah,
It's
because
completely
y-
within
you know,
your rights
yeah,
to do so.
and Carrie, well, you know this because you've been a part of this journey. The promise of the village to the community when we didn't take up electronic signs previously was we're going to continue to support the communities as best we can, invest in the technology, and start making it easier for businesses to be found. In an era with these everywhere, it's not like businesses don't have more effective ways to reach their customers, current and future. So I got to tell you that the thing that drives me crazy about our current sign ordinance is I'd like to see banners and inflatables stricken,
And-
flat out gone.
And we can do that.
And if it's a change of owner, but it's the same business, that doesn't count as a grand opening, correct?
Yeah, probably would here. It's a new business, right?
No,
Well,
it's the
change of
same
ownership
business,
is
all they
not,
did was change
yeah, with a new
owners.
business, let's say you own a Starbucks and you sell it, it's still, the Starbucks is still in existence, it's been continuously been open, that would not be considered a grand opening. We just do a change in ownership on that business, everything else stays the same, the way we process
Guess
that.
that's, you know,
So the
Carol,
new owner can't say that he's doing
No.
a grand opening and
take them out.
And if you're doing a grand opening in Wisconsin, you can't do the grand opening advertisement in Orland Park for that store in
Send it to the
Wisconsin.
lawyers for review, right?
Sometimes we've had that happen, which is why we clarified it in the definition of what a grand opening is.
So Carrie, could we, and again, I'd like to get the consensus of the committee, but could we take out some of these temporary signage completely?
Yes.
Except in those circumstances where, and we delineate certain ones, where
Temporary business?
temporary business, a couple of other exceptions
Sure.
that are,
Maybe when they've got a permanent sign ordered and it hasn't been installed?
yeah, when there's certain, I don't want to, say
Okay.
never, but I don't want to make, I'd rather the exception not be the rule.
Yep.
What do you think
We
about-
can make those
what do you think about
changes.
the inflatables and the pennants?
oh, inflatables need to go.
So I just want to make sure, just before we finish up here, so for grand openings, you don't want any special temporary signage for grand openings?
So for grand openings, me personally, that doesn't offend me, but I'll hear what.
Because my issue with the pennants is they never seem to go away.
Right.
And then with the inflatables, I'm pretty sure that the one that's near the entrance to where Cafe Mille is, off of 159th and Wolf, is now on its 50th year of existence. I'm being facetious, of course. So I guess I've never liked pennants and I've never liked the inflatables. So if I had my druthers, we would not allow them for anything. There's other ways to help promote a business when they just open.
So let me backtrack and say, I'm okay with them for 14 days if you all can tell me that you will enforce it.
We will, but it will not be a top priority unless you want me to make it a top priority. Because we just take our workload, as you know. I mean, if we get a complaint in the neighborhood with someone whose grass is tall, or a property maintenance issue, or something else that's impacting the neighborhood, we're always going to take those resident complaints and put them on the top to resolve. We will get to these, and we've also talked about how we go about enforcing these things. Maybe we do it a little bit different. Maybe it isn't always property maintenance who has to be the one to be responsible. We know we don't want any of our inspectors to have blinders on when they're out in the field, and we want to be as proactive as we can as opposed to reactive. So we're having those other conversations in-house too.
Yeah.
We
Do they
can
get
also
fined?
put this code in place, and we can evaluate it over 3 months or 6 months. And if we feel like it's a problem, we can always come back and we can become more restrictive. It's really up to you how you want to start. Or you can stay restrictive, and you can change that. It's 100% up to the village board on how you want to do this. This is truly setting policy.
Do you want to?
Do they get fined?
Yes, they do.
Do they know that ahead of time? If they have their flags up for 16 days, they're going to
Well,
get
when they
a
come in
fine?
to issue a permit, when they sign to get the permit, they know what the rules are, yes.
But don't we get their email, and can't we send them an email when somebody says it's still up? I mean, I'm not looking to fine
Yeah.
these businesses,
Yeah.
but just, can't we shoot them an email and say, you're gonna get, an inspector's gonna be out?
Right.
if
Or
you
usually,
don't take it
our
down.
inspectors are out there anyway, they'll just stop in and say, listen, you gotta take this down. It's easier than
Okay.
processing a certified letter, mailing it out, and all this other stuff.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
just make sure I'm playing this out. So I'm not quite sure what the full board's going to say about the pennants and inflatables, because in my mind, that's an open question. Because, Carol, if I heard you right, you don't mind the grand openings for a limited time.
But not for
Puts a burden
5
on
years.
staff to replace it. So we can't regulate content. That's clear. We're going to allow some additional temporary signs, or not, correct? Those A-frames, we don't have to allow those?
Right now they're prohibited.
The village uses them all the time.
We're exempt from our own codes.
Well, that's terrible.
Yeah, well, that goes down. That goes down well with the voting public. Yeah, yeah. Let's figure out that one.
By the way, to our village manager, our current A-frame signs are plastic, so they are out of code. And if we can't set an example, how can we require anybody else to do the?
Because I guess what I need to think through, and we don't have to finish this evening, is
And we can continue to have this dialogue, it doesn't have to be tonight. We can continue to talk about this amongst the staff and the committee.
Yeah, you want to get it to.
And there's nothing that says that this has to go to board in 2 weeks. It's really up to what this committee wants to do, and what direction you want to give us to make changes to what we're proposing.
How do you want to handle this? Just
Yeah.
hold it in committee for?
Yeah, I mean, I would, since it's 7:20, and I know
Right.
we have a couple of items
do.
that we still want to get through. I mean, unfortunately, the earlier committees, went a little longer than we thought. And I don't want to rush through this.
You want to just continue it to the next,
Motion to continue?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, you want to let him speak? Yes, I'm sorry. Before I do that, before we take a vote on that, there was one resident who signed in to speak, and I'd like to give him an opportunity. Raymond Ald?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Ald, I should have.
I have his name and address and everything.
Do I need to be sworn in like at the
No,
other meeting?
just state your name and address.
Again, my name is Ray Ald, and I represent St. Michael here in Orland Park. The PPC, or Parish Pastoral Council member, is what I am. And I just wanted to give you some context. I'm here to talk about the digital sign topic, which I know has been discussed a lot. But on the afternoon of Monday, May 7th, I was made aware of the Planning Commission meeting that was that evening. And so I made a point of coming here because I wanted to see and understand the process. I was not prepared to make any comment at that time because I had no time to prepare. I did, have certain elements, but I wanted more than that to be able to give a complete understanding of our position. So on the afternoon of Monday, or the next day, I should say, I made a phone call to Stephanie Malmberg, and she graciously agreed to an appointment here at the Village Hall and assured me that you were all always interested in getting the public perspective. And at that point, she gave me an understanding of how I would need to proceed at this point in time. So that's the context of why I'm making the comments now and didn't have the opportunity to get them in on that last commission meeting last week. And my understanding that was not the regular schedule that was online, because when I looked online, there was a schedule of dates, and that one wasn't on there, but that could be my mistake. But long and the short of it, somebody sent me that last week's date. So at any rate, I'm here to ask that the development code amendment, section 6307, code reflect allowing digital signs. Our desire at St. Michael's is to be able to use such a sign to proactively and more effectively reach out to the community, allowing more people to experience the vibrant and inviting way of life here in Orland Park, and I mean that very sincerely. And then I also was talking to Stephanie, and I assured her, as I assured you, that we're willing to work with the village to make that possible in terms of details of the sign and any modifications. So the additional thing, though, that came about in my pursuit of a sign for St. Michael is that I became aware of the improvement in technology and ease of use and appearance in recent years of digital signs. And it was very apparent as I researched the data and information and comments to support that position. And the history that we have now in terms of performance and the data that we now have, I think makes a case for including digital signs. And 59% of small businesses reported more sales after installing on-premises digital signs, not somewhere out on the road, but on their premises. That 59% figure was from the National Signage Research and Education Conference. All the while in that successful figure, they were keeping sales and marketing costs down and sales opportunities up. So it's really can have an important impact on the commercial community. I'm here for St. Michael's, yes, but we're part of the village here in Orland Park, and it's our desire to be supportive of the entire village. You know, so I come in that spirit. And then many villages throughout the country have been impacted by decreased tax revenue as a result of changes in retail product delivery and consumer buying habits with people such as Amazon and so forth. And they're struggling with that. And it's the decline in that tax revenue is impacting villages, and they're struggling to, okay, let's figure out some answers. And I'm suggesting to you that this is part of that answer. It can be providing commercial business with the opportunity to generate significantly greater sales. It can make a positive impact on the village tax revenue. And let me repeat that. On the village tax revenue, there's an opportunity to have that increase. And then in that process, hopefully hold the line on sales tax for the residents, and then giving them more reason to reside here and shop here. And I really believe that there's a synergistic effect that can take place on all these things. It isn't just a case of 2 + 2 + 2 is 6, but it's a case of multiplication and a synergy that occurs. So I really, ask your consideration to approve this request. Now, I do have some things I'd like to cite, if that's okay. In terms of the community, some feedback, and there's 3 comments from people regarding the community. Is that all right if I proceed with that?
So we're about 28 minutes beyond our time
Okay,
for starting
all right.
the board. There's not going to be a decision made tonight
No, I'm
on
not
this
after that.
ordinance. So I'm not sure if you would be able to come back again in June or July when this is taken up again. I do have the packet that you dropped
Mm-hmm.
off. Do you have extra copies? Or I can have our village manager make copies for the other.
I
We
provided
received a
8
bunch of
copies for all of the village
Okay.
officials.
Okay.
And I delivered those Friday.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, and the thing that I'd encourage you to do then is read the community
Sure.
comments from various people, and then
Yes.
read the commercial comments.
Yep.
And then also to look at the cost per thousand for the merchants to advertise and promote their product, getting all the way up to about $22 per thousand for TV, when it's 74 cents per thousand for digital signs. So
Okay.
I'll shut up wherever you
Okay.
want me to. Do you want the visuals at all, or the renderings at all, or you have those?
We have them. We have
Okay.
those, the ones you
So just
dropped
from
off.
my
Yes.
understanding, then a decision is not made tonight, but I would be able to come back and.
Sure. If you'd like
bef-
to, it's going to be either
The
in June or
village board
July.
meeting.
Yeah, well, it will be at this committee meeting again, and then it will go to the village board the following meeting. But it will
Right.
be either here,
Is there not a June 4th?
it's not going to be taken up at the June 4th. It'll come back to the committee on June 18th, but I'm not sure if it's going to be held on that day.
Will that be the planning commission?
No, it
We'll
would
make
be-
sure we notify.
Yeah, if you have his contact information, Mr. Lamargo will let you know when it is going to be held
Yes,
before.
and thank you very
Okay.
much. I really appreciate
Thank you for your
it.
comments.
Thank you so much.
We voted to hold that, so,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Did you second it?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All the expansion?
Carrie?
Madam
just
Chair, this
quickly?
is a small addition to the Aldi grocery store located in Southmore Commons. It's a 2,297 square foot expansion. They are relocating the parking fields. They're not losing any parking spaces, and it was unanimously approved and recommended by the Planning Commission.
Madam Chair?
Trustee Dodge.
Move to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of the preliminary site plan elevations, preliminary landscape plan, and special use permit amendment for the Aldi expansion at 13145 LaGrange Road is recommended by the May 8th, 2018 Plan Commission meeting is fully referenced below.
Your second? Second? All in favor?
Madam Chair, I'm going to vote no to stay with my consistency for that whole project. I voted no because it was not what we were originally told when that project first came in, the entire project, when we first approved it.
I'll vote aye.
All right, passes.
The Villas of Tallgrass?
Madam Chair, tonight, this is a residential project that is being proposed for approval. The subject piece of property is located off 167th Street, immediately east of the railroad tracks on 167th Street. This is a piece of property that is approximately 11 acres and is currently in unincorporated Cook County. The developer, which is Marth Construction, is proposing to build a new subdivision, and it will be zoned R4. They are requesting rezoning, site plan approval, subdivision elevations, landscape plan, and a special use with some modifications. There are a total of 19 lots, and these are ranch duplexes that are targeted to the 55 and plus older age group. Also, as part of this development, it will connect into the existing Scarlet Lane, and there will be an entrance off of 167th Street. They are also proposing a park that will be located immediately adjacent to 167th Street. And this park is unique to the village in that this is one of the first proposed parks that is geared towards more of the 55 and older generation. So you'll have some exercise equipment and other types of equipment not necessarily geared towards children. However, I will point out during the Planning Commission public hearing process, there was a lot of discussion about this park, and the condition was added to your staff memo to look into exploring, seeing if there's a way we could also make some, add some child-friendly equipment as well. And that is something that the developer and the builder is currently looking at, but it is included as part of your motion as well. We are here to answer any questions that you may have about this project. It has been granted preliminary engineering in terms of wetland mitigation, tree mitigation, stormwater transportation, all that stuff. And I do believe the petitioner's here to answer any questions as well. There were a few residents from the surrounding neighborhoods who did come out to speak at the public hearing, and their concerns are listed in the staff report as well as the response to those concerns.
And I think we have a resident here who'd like to speak, Mr. Balagani.
Thank you. So, again, I'm speaking on behalf of about 40 of our residents that surround this area, so many of us were able to come to the meeting on May 8th. So I'm just kind of reiterating some of the concerns that we have. You know, it was nice to see your guys' concern about with the Robert Davidson Center when it's getting knocked down, the concern of what is the view going to be to the surrounding neighborhood, and to ask the residents that are going to be affected there what they thought and their input on that. I don't think we feel that we've had any of that kind of input in regards to this, as far as mitigating the wetlands, the environmental effect on that, altering quite drastically the tree line behind us of mature trees that are there that have been for any number of years, and that we're knocking that down. The environmental effect on that is a concern to our neighborhood. The other part is that, which seems contrary to our neighborhood feeling, the connection of Scarlet kept being proposed as some sort of benefit. None of us really feel that that is a benefit to us at all. In fact, we feel that since we don't have a neighborhood park, the park that is going to be proposed is still quite far away and doesn't have child equipment at the moment. That connecting Scarlet actually poses a danger to our children in our neighborhood, which currently use our streets as a de facto park because we don't have one. It was mentioned that the through traffic would really be from our neighborhood going through 167th. We don't want to go through 167th, and our neighborhood has said that we don't need that connection to be made if that's the reasoning. I'm not clear on what the benefit of connecting that is. Ultimately, I guess our goal today is to request is, this is a project that very likely will go through. If, Martha is a respected builder in our community. They've been here for a long time. They built a bunch of homes in our neighborhood, so that's not the problem. But it would be great if we could maybe sit down with them and maybe address some of these concerns. Are there ways that we can maybe change in some ways the plans here so that they take these concerns into account?
So, Carrie, was there any effort to have a neighborhood meeting to discuss what their concerns were?
There was not a neighborhood offered by the developer. However, the notices for the public hearing went out. So we had quite a few of the neighbors who were at the public hearing. The developer did comply with all of those notices in terms of certified mails, posting of the signs and things like that, which obviously resulted successfully in getting the neighbors out to the public hearing as well. I can speak, if you want me to speak on some of the other issues that were just raised, I'd be more than happy to do so. The issue of Scarlet Drive being connected, and you should all have in your Legistar packet an aerial of this entire area. And I would like to point out is that Scarlet Drive, when it was constructed, when the other neighborhoods were constructed, it deads in right into this piece of property. That is not by accident. That was planned that way with the anticipation that this piece of property would eventually be annexed into the village and Scarlet Drive would connect to 167th Street. That is not something new. It is literally dead end right there. In addition to the concerns expressed about the wetlands, there are a few isolated wetlands, and again, it's reflected on your site plan that you have. You can see them on the site plan, that will have to be mitigated in order for this project to move forward. They will be complying with all the Army Corps requirements to do that mitigation, and in fact, have begun the process already to do that. So we will make sure as part of the final engineering approvals that not only do they comply with our requirements for the mitigation, but they have to comply with the federal government's requirements as well. As far as the park, I perhaps have a unique perspective because I live in this area as well. And there are a number of parks in this area that do have child equipment as well. This is a unique one because it is going to be different than what we have, but there are other parks in the general vicinity that just have the park, and we also have, in this particular quadrant of Orland Park, significant amount of open space, significant amount of bikes, pedestrian paths, and other recreational amenities as well that I think should be noted. We're talking about a total of 38 new homes that are going to be constructed, 19 lots, so it's a very minimal impact on transportation, very minimal impact on those types of concerns. As the gentleman has indicated, we're all very familiar with Marth Construction. They're literally building a very similar product west on 167th Street at Wolf Road by the Grassland subdivision. Similar type of product they're doing. These products will not diminish the value of the neighborhood at all. In fact, I think they will contribute to the value of the neighborhood because they are very well, you have the renderings, you have the pictures of the homes being built there. And these homes will sell in, the $400, $500 level dollar range. So all those things I think point to that there is value for this piece of property. This piece of property, quite frankly, has been a property maintenance challenge for the village for many years. If you drive down 167th Street and you notice there's a little white house there that's all overgrown with trees and things like that, we have received, probably from the very neighbors who have expressed concern about this subdivision going in, complaints about why have we not done anything, village, to improve this area. And quite frankly, our hands were tied. We couldn't. It was not in the village, and we had no jurisdiction whatsoever as it relates to that. All we could do is pick up the phone, call Cook County, and ask them to please come out and take a look at this. So a lot of those issues are going to be resolved with the construction of this subdivision. In addition, if you're familiar with the area, there are gaps in our pedestrian bike paths in this area. This project will help fill a portion of that, as well as we're working on a separate grant to get the pedestrian multi-use path connected all the way to Wolf Road, which is also will include a safe railroad crossing on 167th Street, which we currently do not have today as well. So there's a lot of things happening in this area to try to improve the entire part of Orland Park for the benefits of everyone.
Comments?
The reason I asked the village manager to come up, because I had a question about, you mentioned there were no parks, and he said that the Sterling Park is one of the parks that still has to be developed?
That's correct, yeah, the Sterling.
That the land is there, but the park just hasn't been built
Yeah,
yet?
so the way that we do parks today is very different to the way we did parks, say, 10 years ago. The way that we did them about a decade ago is the developer would come in, they build a subdivision, they would have to donate to the village a certain amount of acreage based upon the size of the subdivision. We would take that deed, and then it would be up to the village to put the equipment in. When the recession hit back in 2008, 2009, we realized that wasn't going to work anymore because our park fund was drying up because we didn't have a lot of building happening. So for the recent subdivisions that have gone in, such as Deer Haven, such as Greystone, and now this one, is we have asked the developer to not only dedicate the land, but to also provide the equipment as well. It's a win for the developer because having a park that's completely developed and built out is a marketing mechanism for them, but it's also, then we don't have to try to budget that in subsequent budget years. However, I will say and acknowledge openly that there are some parks that we still have not put park equipment in. Sterling Ridge is one of them. Old Mill, which is in the same area as well. The land has been donated to the village, but we have not had the funds to put the equipment in yet. So those are still on the parks list to do as money comes into the parks fund. And as our economy starts to pick back up, we're starting to see that happening. But not at the rate we did back in the 1990s when we were issuing, hundreds of residential permits a year.
And Carrie, I went by the site today and I noticed the parcel to the north of there, the property north of there, similar type?
Yes, if you again look at this
homes?
aerial,
Yes.
if you look at the surrounding uses, the majority of the surrounding uses around this piece of property, with the exception of what's to the south, are multifamily, R4, and actually they're the older style, they're townhomes. So again, when we look at rezoning and we look at when we annex a piece of property, we look at what is the appropriate use for that rezoning and what is surrounding it. And clearly this fits within that. The other thing that should be noted is in R4 zoning, the maximum density per acre is 6 units. 6 units per acre. They're below that. They're below code with this. So they're also in line with density for an R4 zoning district. In fact, they're below that.
And as far as the trees, I mean, right now, this is in Cook County. If that property owner wanted to cut down every tree on the land,
There's nothing we could do to stop it. The nice thing about them annexing into the village is they do have to do, so there's two things. They have to do tree mitigation, but they also have to come up with a new landscape code, which you have in your thing tonight, in your packet tonight. So they will either mitigate the trees on site or they'll pay into our green infrastructure fund. And then they will also have to comply with their new landscaping code, which does include additional buffering against the existing single-family homes.
So having said that, there's nothing that would prohibit the developer from sitting down with some of the residents if you.
Right, and I guess that's ultimately where we're at now is if they could sit down with us and go through these concerns.
He's right there, so you can ask him after the fact. That's always something that, I think is a good idea, but it would really be up to the developer, so.
Did you want to say something?
Thank you.
I'm sure my client would be willing to discuss
Sure.
with the neighbors, but we would not be willing to do that at the expense of delaying the development process, so.
I wasn't proposing that.
Do we, just broadly for the residents from the area, one of the things that Carrie said a lot, right, and we've seen this kind of stuff before, that you can imagine Cook County's planning and standards are different than Orland's. And so as Carol said, this developer, like a lot of developers, will put things in that abut Orland Park, but they are not in Orland Park, so they are built to a different set of codes. So, all things considered, I, for one, they're happy that they're coming into the village. That gives us more negotiating power to try and get them up to the standards that we've all moved here for. Doesn't hurt to have the conversation, right? As Carrie said, that we can probably work some things through in terms of additional buffering, because it's always, when you're used to something behind your house that's green and then it changes to residential, there's always a transition period, right? And so we're trying to get this, I would say, village is trying to get this right. And so if you can have that conversation and, better than what it could be. It's not necessarily the answer you want to hear when you're going from one type of use, which is not much, to residential. But if that developed in the county, it would be an altogether different development. It's just that we've seen this, you should all be familiar with this. A lot of those buildings that are at the south end of Wolf Road, about where Southwest Highway takes off, were originally developed in the county, and they're still in the county. So we can't enforce any of our zoning or our developmental codes. And we've always tried to get more property in Orland Township into the municipality of Orland Park for exactly these types of conversations. The standards and what we would require of the developer are different than what you would see when folks are allowed to develop in the county. It's an is, and we're trying to do the best we can.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair?
Trustee Fenton.
Move to recommend to the village board approval of a rezoning site plan subdivision elevations, landscape plan, and special use permits with modifications for the Villas of Tallgrass subdivision proposed for 10851 West 167th Street as recommended at the May 8, 2018 Plan Commission meeting, all subject to annexation into the Village of Orland Park as fully referenced below.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, so if we could just, the lot was said tonight, which kind of goes along with developments, but we'd encourage you to continue to ask the village and talk with the developer. So it's up to you.
Sure. You have a
We
question?
could broker a meeting.
You have a question?
Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick thing. I know making profit and developing land is very important, but it's very good that there's new buildings coming up in the area. Unfortunately, in that subdivision where the Landings Drive is, in the Sterling Ridge subdivision, there is no sign that the cars have to go slow. Cars just go in, there is no sign of a stop sign inside. And what I feel will happen when this property gets connected to that subdivision is that cars are going to try to bypass the whole signal on 108 and 167 and keep on rushing to get to 167 from 108 through the subdivision, people who know. So I feel right now our kids are used to playing on the streets because we don't have any things to play. We play cricket, we play baseball, we play a lot of different things. So I would prefer that the village does something for the area. Otherwise, we're going to have to get all the people in the subdivision sign a proposal to stop this process. I don't know if it's possible, but we'll go to each and every house. Right now, we are all professionals. He is a physician, I'm a physician. There are lots of physicians who are living in the area. We will stop our clinics, we will go to each and every house and complain that this is happening for our kids. Because if the traffic goes through the area again and again, and there is an accident, we will have to blame the village to allow this proposal without a protection for the kids. You need to make sure, rather than giving us excuses that there is a downfall in the economy and we cannot do any parks in the area, first you propose to make a park in the area, which was already planned to make in the Sterling Ridge subdivision. Why can't we do something like that for now? For the kids can start playing in the parks over there.
So is it on the list? Or where is it on the list for their subdivision?
I mean, we have a number.
You're in Sterling Ridge?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I live in the area too, and right now, for a new park, it's between $250,000 to $300,000.
Right.
We try and replace a park a year. We have over 60 parks that
But
we
how about
either
the
have
new
to
parks,
replace.
Joe? How
But
about new parks?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
It is on the list. I know
It's
for
on
a
the
fact
list.
it's on the list.
Yeah, it's on the list.
As is a couple others in the area as well. It's just it's a matter of prioritizing our resources. But that is a valid point, and we can get back to you on the status of those.
Well, then you should just allow the proposal to go through once they have proposal for the parks. Because if the building goes on building and there's nothing else available, then it's going to keep on postponing forever. You need to have a proposal for our kids to play in the park. We have to drive them 2 miles away to the Centennial Parks. We have to drive them away different places.
Well, and our meeting is over, but there will be a park in this subdivision.
Can you put that in this order right now?
It's provided in there. There's going to be a park, and they're
Is
going to
there
look
a
at
date or a deadline that they have?
Well, it would be constructed as part of the subdivision, yeah,
Where will the park be?
along 167th Street.
I think there's,
That's not what we are asking for.
Okay, so if you want, you can finish some of your questions with the Development Services Director after the meeting, but we did finish our vote.
Is there any way that they can hold off the passage of the cars from 167 to 108 bypassing?
No, and historically, our village has taken the policy of connecting our subdivisions.
Then there should be proposals to put stop signs and speed breakers in the roads.
Well, that may be
Because there's
down
no
the road.
stop signs there. We've been talking to police officers how to deal with this, and they say, come to the village. But there's no stop signs over there. They need to put stop signs, they need to put speed limits in that subdivision, there's nothing there.
Well, if you can pass those comments along to
Right,
the
so I think
police
we're talking
department.
about a couple different issues
Right.
here that aren't necessarily
So,
tied
ma'am,
to-
sorry, excuse me, we are talking about our kids' safety. That's what we are talking about. That's
So
all
what
we
we can
care.
do is we can follow up with the police department, we can find out what is happening in the subdivisions that we're talking about, if there's a need to do additional stop signs or additional speed limits. Obviously, this subdivision that's going in, although I'll bet small, will still have those same types of concerns and enforcements for traffic that we do in every other subdivision as well.
No, it's not a very small subdivision. It's
Sir,
almost 100
sir,
houses
I-
there.
Sir, I don't mean to cut you off, but the meeting is over, so we will go ahead and take your information, and the Development Services Director will speak with you afterwards, okay? Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. All right. Yep. On this issue? It's up.
Sir, I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay. Come on. It's my bad, I didn't ask.
Chairman Ruzick?
Yep.
We could get the names and we could meet with the neighbors, kind of
Sure.
have a meeting with them.
And I
discuss
apologize
them.
that I didn't ask for any other audience members, because the first gentleman who spoke said he was speaking on behalf of the residents. So I didn't know that, I thought the other residents were not going to speak, but I'll give you 2 minutes if you
Thank you.
speak quick.
My name is Stephen Bjornsted. I'm a resident of Orland Park. I live in the affected area. I just want to show you a little picture here. You're going to be attacking and taking down the wetlands, which is one of the main reasons that I live there. I'm an environmentalist, and I retired. I could have bought a house anywhere, but I bought a house that was bordered on 2 sides by unincorporated Cook County. And I checked the zoning before I invested, and it was not residential. Now, in this wetland, that's a lot of water. I suggest if you're going to push this through on us anyway, we have no way to stop it, evidently, I suggest that you flip your design. Instead of putting the pond way on the other side of the field, why not put the retention pond right next to where all the water is? This is where your storm sewer is. It doesn't handle it. Put the pond where the wetland is, save the wetland for the millions of animals that are in there, which some of us care about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's it. We're going to take a 2-minute recess.